Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iPhone has quite a few battery tips that you can use to better prolong the battery health and also your battery life throughout the day. And I wanted to go through all of the different tips and rate them from best to worst. Or basically rate them from most important to least important. So the first one has to do with temperature. You want to avoid extreme temperatures. This will harm your battery health the most if it's in particular, a very hot temperature. So as you can see here, it's pretty cold. This is in Fahrenheit, so 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow it will be about 56. If you can keep your battery somewhere between 40 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 70 degrees Fahrenheit, your battery health will last the longest, or your battery will keep its maximum charge the longest. That's also true of actually using your phone as well. If you're in a very hot climate, the actual battery will degrade more quickly than if you were in a cool climate. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you're in a warm climate, you can't avoid it. Try to avoid putting a really containing case on it. Something like a life-proof case or something like that may keep that heat in to where it would degrade the battery. And that's true of our second tip, which is remove those cases when charging. Those cases that completely surround the phone are very nice, especially if you need something that's extra waterproof and things like that, but those will harm the actual battery over time if it just gets too hot all of the time. The third tip has to do with screen brightness. Now, I adjust the screen brightness here in the control center, and that's what I recommend. And Apple recommends is to keep it on auto brightness. So you want to use in combination with auto brightness, adjusting it yourself. So maybe you go into your settings. We'll go back here. We can go to General. And then if we go to Accessibility, then we go to Display Accommodations. Auto brightness is here, and they've kind of buried it so that you keep it on. And the reason to keep it on is it will adjust using the ambient light sensor and try to save battery throughout the day. However, if you're in a very bright environment where it's going to need to brighten the screen all the time, simply turn it down yourself and it will stay there for a while and then adjust as you forget about it throughout the day. That's usually the best way to keep your battery going throughout the day. Now, the next thing is your location services. Location services that use GPS antennas use a lot of power. It takes the signals coming from GPS antennas that are in space from satellites and then triangulates its position based off that. That technology takes a lot of power, and by limiting what is actually using that or turning it off altogether, really can save some battery life. So that can be found under Privacy. So we'll scroll down to Privacy, then Location Services. Now, you need location services for things like Maps or Google Maps or really anything that's going to know where you're going. You can turn it off altogether here or limit it based on how I've done it while using. So for example, if I go down to Google Maps, you'll see it's turned on to while using. I'll allow it to use it. When I close the app, it will shut that off. So that's how I arrange it. Of course, if you want to limit that even further, you can go into System Services, and anything that's purple it has used recently. Now, of course, keep in mind if you disable these, you're going to disable features of the phone as well. But you will limit your battery usage by doing that, and it will save you some battery for sure. Now, the next important thing is Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi uses very little power when compared to LTE, especially if you have a low signal in an LTE area. So Wi-Fi is something you want to use if you have it at your home. Keep Wi-Fi on. It will use less power than using the cellular signal. However, if you don't have Wi-Fi in the area and you want to keep it consistently using the cellular signal, you can turn it off here and it will only disconnect until tomorrow, or you can go to Settings and turn it off altogether here and just hit the button and it will shut off. Something else that can use a lot of power is background app activity. And keep in mind, this is ranked from most important to least important. Background app activity is up there on the list still, but that can use a lot of power from your applications doing things in the background. So Apple recommends that you turn that off if you need to, and that can be found under General and then Background App Refresh. And you can turn this off for each thing individual or all together, and you can see Background App Refresh. I have it turned on while I'm on Wi-Fi, but you can turn them on or off based on what you want to be able to use your phone in the background. Certain things you may want, such as Google Maps, others you may not. It just depends on what your preference is, what you're using, and what you need to update in the background. Now, the next thing has to do with notifications. If we go to battery here, you'll see, we'll wait for this to load, and you'll see my battery health is still at 100%. And if you see here, it says home and lock screen. If that's using a lot of power, that may be because your phone is getting a lot of notifications and you haven't customized those or turned any of them off. And so every time you get a notification, it actually lights up the screen. Even if it's locked, it'll light the screen up and then give you the notification and turn off. So if you go to notifications and go into each one of these, unfortunately, you can't turn them all off at once, but you can go into them individually. So maybe Twitter here, you can just turn it off for now, or turn it on and customize what you'd like as far as where you'd like it on your lock screen or not. So keep that in mind. That can save you some battery. That won't be turning your screen on if that's off, or if you're in do not disturb, it will do the same thing. Just hit do not disturb and it will stop doing that and won't show you those notifications. Now, the next important one is your email. When it has to actually go and retrieve that email when you're using email, it takes a lot of power to do that if it's checking it all so often. However, you can change this so that it only fetches mail when you go into the email app, or it can do it automatically based on power and time of day and Wi-Fi and things like that. That can be found down here under passwords and accounts. Down at the bottom, you'll see it says fetch new data. Tap on that. And down here, you can change it to individually here or automatically, manually, hourly, every 30 minutes or 15 minutes. If you switch it to manually, it will only check when you go into the email app itself. Otherwise, it won't check email and it will save you some power. However, if you're waiting for that important email, you'll want to keep that on or at least checking every 15 minutes. Now, if you need to extend battery life, and you're down to about 20% or so, I'm at 27%, you may want to turn on low power mode. However, I don't recommend this all the time because you actually limit the power of the phone and you shut off an awful lot of features that you may actually want to use. So low power mode is great, but I don't normally recommend it until you're really low on power and you need to extend it throughout the day. I know some people that use this regularly all day long, and you're really just not using the features of the phone. Now, if you're not using your phone and you want to extend it, that's fine, but it does limit the processing power and everything, so it can really slow down the experience. Now, Apple recommends that you update to the latest software. Now, with recent updates and things, there's been problems with updating to the latest software, but I recommend it not only for battery, but for security as well. So you just check that under General and Software Updates. As long as you're up to date, you're good to go. And that's the next tip. Now, there's another one that has to do with Siri, especially if you're using the keyword to wake it up. Now, I do use that often, and it's under Siri and Search. And you'll see it says listen for, and I don't want to say it to activate your phone, but you can turn this off. And I have it off right now. If you want to turn it back on, you have to set it back up. But you get the idea. When you want to use it, it can be there. But otherwise, it is using a little bit of power, listening for your voice, trying to pick that up. So if you disable it, you'll save a little bit of power. And now we're getting down into the ones that don't do as much as the ones I've mentioned previously do. We're going down as far as power usage is concerned. Now, the next one has to do with automatic app updates. If you go into your settings and then you scroll down to iTunes and App Store, in iTunes and App Store, it can automatically download updates in the background or purchases you've made on an iPad to your iPhone, things like that. And this will use power in the background if you want to update something. So maybe you have a new update for one of your applications. It will update by itself. And you may not want to do that right now because you want to conserve power. So I turn these off. They save a little bit of power, and then you'll be good to go from there on out. Now, the next ones are getting into things that don't use a whole lot of power at all, but they're just something to mention. So the next one has to do with reducing motion. Now, this isn't going to save very much battery because there's a motion coprocessor built into the iPhone that is very low power aside from the regular processor, and it's meant to understand the motion of the phone. And so you can reduce that motion under General, and then Accessibility, then Reduce Transparency, you can turn this on, and that will reduce the transparency and the load on the GPU, or the graphics processing unit, so that it doesn't have to work as hard in order to show you things on the phone. And then, like I said, motion, reduce motion. Same thing, it's going to use the graphics processing unit, or GPU, to do that. And that will save you a very little amount of battery, but it will save you a little bit. Also, using a black wallpaper on OLED displays. Now, this could save you a lot depending on how often you're on your home screen. But if you have an iPhone 10, 10s, or 10s Max, you could save quite a bit of power if you have a blackened background, because on an OLED display, the pixels are self-illuminating, or they're projecting their own light. And so they can turn off the pixels that are black because you don't need them on. All you're seeing is black, so shut those pixels off and you're saving power. Anything lit around here isn't black. You're only seeing this lit up, so you're not using power to light those pixels like you would on an LCD. Now, something that is actually fairly power hungry if you're not turning it on is your actual auto lock time. So if you go into your display, you'll see auto lock. Right now I have it set to never because of this video, but you want to really set this to 30 seconds. So if you're done using your phone, you forget about it, it shuts the display off, which uses a lot of power. Turn that on, leave it where it should be at 30 seconds, and you'll save a good amount of power there. Now, something that will save you very little amount of power and disable some features for you, especially if you have an Apple Watch, is Bluetooth. If you turn off Bluetooth altogether in your settings here, go to Bluetooth and turn it off, you'll disconnect your Apple Watch or any headphones and things that you're using, but you will save a little bit of power. Bluetooth is generally very low power, so you really don't have to worry about it too much, but if you're not using it, you might as well shut it off. Also, one thing that is sort of mistaken by a lot of people is closing apps. Unless they are navigation apps that might be using the background tasks, you don't need to close these apps. In fact, closing them and reopening them may use more power than just leaving them suspended here, according to Apple. So you'll see all of these apps are open. I never close my apps, and I probably have 50 in here or 100. I don't close them. I let the phone manage them, and I have no problems whatsoever. Apple has actually stated multiple times that it's better for you not to actually close those because it suspends them and doesn't have to reload everything every time. Now, something that uses very, very minimal power is lowering your volume. So maybe you're really low on power, you need to conserve that extra bit, and you're using headphones with your phone, either plugged in through the bottom here or through Bluetooth, is lower the volume. As the higher the volume goes, the more power you need to bring that volume up. So if you just bring that down a little bit, it should help you out there. Also, you can consider turning off the vibration motor. So again, this isn't going to save you a ton, but it will conserve some power. And you can do that under settings. And then if we go to sounds and haptics, and then we can turn off vibrate on ring, vibrate on silence, and just turn off all of those different vibrations, and you'll save a little bit of power. And finally, something that I've heard that isn't really something you can avoid is scrolling and any motion in the OS whatsoever. So if you were to scroll here, you really couldn't use your phone, but if you had to conserve a lot of power, moving anything on the screen is not only going to sense your finger touching it, but it's also going to require the GPU to ramp up so that it can move the pixels on the display. Now, this isn't going to save you hardly anything. It isn't going to do you a whole lot of good unless you just really need to eke that little extra out. Maybe you only have 5% battery left and you need to get through the day until you can charge, and you only want to use your phone or something. It's going to be better for you not to really touch anything because you need to save that little extra power. And I don't know how realistic that tip is, but it will save you a little bit there. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Those are all the different tips I could find that actually do save a little bit of power. The ones at the end are kind of goofy in many ways, but may have a little bit of benefit from time to time. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you'd like to see more battery tips and tricks videos, let me know in the comments as well. I'll leave a link to the wallpaper in the description. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.